You're listening to Generation AI
from Live Person.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Generation AI. I am Ruth Zive, and I am joined by my fabulous colleague and co-host, Joe Bradley. And today we are going to reflect on what was a truly unbelievable year. We're going to share our thoughts on the last 365 days in this wild and crazy AI space, what that has meant for customers, for employees, and for brands across all industries, and what we think the ongoing impact is going to be to businesses going forward. So, with that in mind, let's get started. Joe, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? It's just you and me today. That's kind of cool.
I know. It's a different, we can be as rude and offensive as we like.
Sweet. Yeah, finally, no one to hold us back.
There you go.
Can you believe we've done it? We've done a year of this now. I mean, that's crazy.
That I know, it's crazy. Do you think we'll make
And
it another year? Let's
let's
double our audience. Let's make it a goal to double our audience so that at least we have 2 people that listen to us.
Yeah, we'll get to 4. I think we can't double the awesomeness of our guest list because we had a really good list this year, and I think a lot of thought-provoking conversations. And I know we did a little bit of mining of the previous conversations to give us some food for thought and some food for reflection around this, at least this American Thanksgiving time. Everything's about food right now.
That is true.
So yeah, I've been looking forward to this all day.
Yeah, I think we're going to do some reflection and some projection, and maybe I'll just kick us off with a quote from one of our most recent episodes. You'll recall we had Daryl Kelly on the podcast from Alvaria, and he had some really interesting things to share. Let's play a clip of something he had to say.
I think what excites me the most is it's an undefined space. It's an undefined technology. And we as technologists, we as enterprises, and even as consumers are the pioneers, right? And not only the pioneers, we will be the ones that help design the applications for this very broad technology. Both us as consumers using our consumer experience and applying that to an organization, and then vice versa, using our organizational experience and applying that to the way in which we as consumers interact with this emerging technology called artificial intelligence. So I'm excited because we get to define it. We get to harness it. We get to shape it. And there's just something beautiful and encouraging. And also there's a lot of responsibility to do it right.
Wow. He said that very eloquently. That's like inspiring. How does that land with you, especially as you sort of look forward to the next year?
Daryl's a graceful guy with his words, and I think he did say that very nicely, and it's enjoyable to listen to, but it's also important, there's definitely important things in there. So I think we're going to air this in a couple of weeks, but we're recording this on November 21st, and we're right in the thick of just all the changes around OpenAI and Microsoft right now. So I feel like undefined space, undiscovered country, pioneering. We had a lot of that this year, and I think it would have been tempting if this hadn't happened to look at this year and think like, okay, well, maybe things are settling down, but they sure as heck are not settling down anytime soon. I think that's got to be point one.
Yeah, I agree. Just when you think the world has come back down to earth, and then there's some new development that has us spinning all over again. So timing is interesting to be reflecting on that comment from Daryl.
Right. Is OpenAI going to be the same kind of company in a year or in a month that it is today? And how does this relate to, the future of artificial intelligence? It obviously relates quite a bit. I mean, one of the interesting developments this year was the kind of full embrace of a company that began as a research company and as a nonprofit of, sort of for-profit enterprise, right? And now that a lot of that appears to be, and we don't know yet, migrating over to Microsoft. That's already been, of course, a very, huge for-profit enterprise. And so I think we're seeing, we already were hurtling fast into the big money era of AI, and I think that's an important part of what's going on here. I think the big open question in my mind is what's happening. What's going to happen with open source? Like, we kind of see how the Windows and the Mac operating systems are starting to come to life in this space, maybe in Microsoft and Google. But then we have the Linux side of this metaphor, in the work done by many companies, but maybe led by Meta, against or towards open source and in-house model building for smaller operations. And so to me, that's a fascinating landscape. And the way that played out in computing infrastructure and in operating systems is you have you end up with different systems for different places. And so are we going to have different AIs for different applications? And is one of these routes going to lead to better multimodal AI that interacts with the physical world better, to our last conversation around Tulip? And is that going to lead just down a branch from one of these providers that looks really different? Or who will emerge as a major player in that we haven't heard of today? And how will the vertical space around AI play out? Like, I don't think we know anything about that yet. I think we have an opinion at LivePerson, but just the like 2024's got to be the year where we start to see more applications come to life and pioneer more utility out of this, because 2023 was really all about exploration.
Yeah, and then you layer on top of all of those unknowns this notion, which Daryl sort of pokes at, around responsibility and safety. And given all of the rumors that were swirling in the last couple of days around Sam Altman's departure and the why, like, do you think that we land in a better place in the coming year along those lines? Do you think that there will be better standards or expectations or laws, for that matter, that keep us safer or inspire a greater sense of responsibility?
So I think that, to me, this year is an example of the world moving towards safety on this technology faster than I would have guessed we would. Right? I think, going back to the conversation with Miriam early on, where her point, I think, was really around, this is one of the few things that a lot of legislators agree we need to take seriously and understand. Like, there's a little bit of bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress, which is, a rare thing these days, I'm sorry to say. From there to the work that's been done on the EUAI Act, and the World Economic Forum has gotten in the act here. There's a lot of relatively fast moving concerns around safety, and even industry leaders saying, let's take a break. And Altman himself going and doing a circuit with Congress, an international circuit, to go and and testify at the U.S. government, and then go travel abroad. This to me is a world that is aware that this is important in a way that maybe we haven't been at the beginning of other technological revolutions. And I think that's probably really healthy. Intention, however, and awareness don't always translate to execution. So we will have to see how that plays out. But I would put us, I'd love to hear your take too, but my take is we're in probably better footing than I would have guessed if you'd have started to tell me this story back, a year and a half ago, and ask me where we'd be.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at a minimum, we've definitely landed in a place over the course of the year where there's, I think, consensus and awareness of the fact that safety, responsibility, it needs to be a top of mind consideration. And we need to establish a sense of balance along those lines relative to innovation and exploration, as you put it. Like, you can't over-index on one versus the other. They need to be considerate of one another. And I do think that, I don't think there's anyone challenging that. So that seems to be healthy. Where it lands, though, I'm not sure it will be resolved in the next year.
Yeah, they think it's hard to argue resolution, but maybe some progress. We'll see. All right. Another topic, if you don't mind.
Of course.
We're talking about how this space is a little bit undefined, and we've got to discover it, and what last year's discovery means for next year's discovery, et cetera. that's all well and good, but there's also been a lot more real world impact this year on AI than maybe ever before. That might actually be true. Um, when you think about customer facing systems built off of AI, what stands out to you in 2023, and what do you see coming, or what are you excited about in 2024? I know you just did an event with our customers, so whatever you learn there, feel free to weave it in.
Yeah, I always say the most validating experience as a marketer is when you speak to customers and you hear their perspective and it's aligned to your perspective as a marketer. It kind of makes me feel a little bit reassured that I'm not just spinning BS. I like what it is that I'm spinning to be anchored in a customer perspective. So I got a lot of that this past week at our Spark event. I think what my big takeaway from the year in terms of AI is that, there was so much frenzy at the beginning and really like some panic that jobs are going to go away quickly. Um, and while I wouldn't say that that's not going to be the case, what we found at Live Person and what customers have really validated, and this was a theme in our last podcast episode with Tulip, is that really AI and generative AI is in the near term going to augment human activities. And I think that our customers at Live Person are most eager for that application of AI. They want to see customer facing agents be more efficient, be more productive, have better jobs, provide more meaningful experiences to their customers. And that diminishes cost on the part of the brand, but it's not necessarily because any of our customers expect that they're not going to have live agents at some point in the near term. So
Yeah.
to me, that's very reassuring because I don't like the idea of in one fell swoop eliminating really important jobs that are customer facing.
Yeah, no, I love that point, and it's like this very practical and real utopia dystopia kind of like set of avenues we got in front of us. It's not necessarily like the AI is going to come and eat your children or something, but
Right.
it is like, look, if we do this wrong, every customer service interaction that you have for the next year could be like awful and feel really impersonal and just be like this slog that you have to, it could be like the IVR times 10 as bad because you're talking to a weird thing that like doesn't really understand you and wasn't really built right and didn't really do what it said it was going to do and feels really off-putting, versus like you're talking to a person, and occasionally maybe a great chatbot that is able to do their job like with a radically better in radically better ways, and like is able to connect with you a lot more deeply. Like to me, it's clear which of those two worlds we want.
Totally. And that's not just better for the consumer. I just before we hopped on here to record, I was actually dealing with a brand over, I was having a bad customer experience.
Mm.
And I'll spare you the details. But the poor agent that was helping me was so frustrated herself about the lack of information that I was able to provide or that she was able to
Mm.
see inside of my account. And she kept having herself to put me on hold to speak to a supervisor. And she kept apologizing. And she really was very genuine in her tone. I know she really just wanted to help me out. Imagine if she had had available to her, because of, AI, more information, better context, better recommendations so that she didn't have to keep putting me on hold. She would have been so much happier herself and probably been more satisfied that she had brought resolution to my issue. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for the brand. It's a win for the agent. It's a win for the customer. So that practical application, I really think in the near term, in the coming year, is going to be very real for most brands, and that makes me excited.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. What about you? What are you excited about for the coming year? And maybe give it a bit of a tech spin because you're much closer to the actual technology that powers all of this. I'd love to understand like what your takeaway has been
Yeah.
in the past year and what you expect in the coming year.
Yeah, no, I think there can be, for the right product and for the right development process, a bit of a beautiful marriage of off the shelf, third party generative models that do like best in class language generation and tighter models for decision making and for problem solving that are needed in order to orchestrate conversations that feel between people and machines that feel better than they've ever felt before. So like, I do kind of believe that. Like, I think that, there's probably 100 different choices in a conversation. I think about customer service conversations a lot, but there's obviously many different types. And I think this is true pretty generally. There's 100 different decisions you can make in like where to take a conversation, what information is relevant, whether or not they said something that affirmed or denied what you just said. Like, are they asking for more information? Like all these things that, all these decisions that need to be made, that if you were going to go and kind of create naive systems that try and go and call the biggest, baddest, best LLM in the world to make every one of those decisions, I think you're in a losing prospect from an economics perspective for most business applications. So when you start hitting the rubber to the road and you ask like, all right, what do I have access to data that I could use to train smaller models to take some of the load off of these big suckers? You might be able to like, I think we can really turn the economics of that circumstance around, right? And I think you can make an amazing experience that costs 10 cents to have instead of $10. And it can become something where like, okay, now these machines and this promise of getting beyond the visual UX of the World Wide Web and clicking and UX affordances that we kind of have come to get used to, but also kind of bug us sometimes, and really get closer to this world where we say what we want, we say what we need, we explain it in words that make sense to us, and it kind of starts to happen. I think we're starting to see and approach the economics of that being viable. There's a lot of work left to do, but it's like in focus.
So I'm going to ask you to put it a little bit in layman's terms for my benefit.
Yeah.
Maybe it helps somebody
Please.
In our audience as well. Do you think that we get to a point where there are like bespoke or tailored models for individual customers or specific segments of customers, and that those are sort of leveraged opportunistically in those circumstances where they're going to have the greatest impact, and that is more meaningful and powerful than these big behemoth models that you've referenced that perhaps become commoditized?
I would say it differently. That might be, I think, first of all, nobody knows, right? But my hunch is that there's like an orchestra of systems responding to a given moment in the conversation, and the signals from them are getting put together, and that might result in a call to GPT-4 that's going to do something, or that might result in, for us, we think about like an escalation to a human agent that needs to solve this problem because it's clear that something's going wrong and the bot can't fix it. Or that might result in, transfer off to another bot that's been optimized on a small model to do something specific. So I think that kind of motion where there's maybe 10 or 20 model calls happening behind the scenes affecting where the conversation go and what handles it is a, kind of a behind the scenes way to to make a great experience and to do it in a way that doesn't break the bank.
Conversational orchestration sounds like
if you like
a loaded topic that we will discuss on a later episode.
It's going to keep coming back up. All right. We're running out of time, so let's do one more.
Sure.
We're going to get a quote out from Ron Miller, who is our resident enterprise reporter at TechCrunch. Well, not a resident, but enterprise reporter at TechCrunch, who came and did an episode with us, and he was talking about regulation. I think this is a really good quote. Can we play it?
A lot of this is being written by some of the biggest players, or they're invited to the table to help write these regulations. And if they're being invited to write these regulations, are they going to write regulations in a way that are fair to the market as a whole, or that, that benefit them maybe even in subtle ways and discourage, smaller startups from being part of this? So because of the regulatory kind of burden that will come with it. So, a lot to think about. And, these things are just happening in real time.
Okay. Awesome quote. I'm going to totally dumb it down to a question, which is who wins and who loses, Ruth, in AI?
Yeah, I love when you dumb it down for me. I need that. That's a big question. When I think about this past year, honestly, and I'm very much wearing my marketing hat and not my AI hat, I feel
Mhm.
like Microsoft was the winner. I think they made some great moves from a marketing perspective, a launch perspective, and even in the last week with everything that's happened, I think they've kind of emerged as the winner. Let's see if that's durable over the course of the next year. Who were
Mhm.
the losers? I think, you know, AI, again, from a marketing perspective, has become even more so a lot of white noise. And I know this came up in a few episodes this year, but every brand seems to be an AI brand. And the challenge is, how do you represent that it's not just two letters that you've tacked onto your brand name, but it's actually something that you can use practically to deliver real business outcomes? And I don't think a lot of brands out there were able to validate that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think there's another, I don't know if I'd call it a loser or not, but I think what surprised me was how many startups we didn't see
Mm,
grow up. We saw OpenAI, and then there's other companies that are kind of also building, like Anthropic had a nice rise, and Cohere is doing some interesting stuff.
yeah.
But we didn't see this plethora of like new businesses just like come to life and start getting huge valuations on the heels of this breakthrough technology. Is that because there hasn't been enough time yet, or is that because the technology kind of favors a consolidation effect more so than a sea of opportunities? Like I think we got to look at 2024 to see.
Yeah, I agree. The jury's out, and I think that the winners will be those companies that are able to represent that this is more than just hype, and that this has real world application that
Yeah,
brands can realize today. So
it's
yeah,
all
it'll be.
about bucks in the
That's
end.
right.
It's all
That's
about
right.
bucks.
Yes. So, as you know, Joe, we wrap up each of our episodes by asking our guest one signature question.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, I think we should
We're doing
end
it.
the episode with the same question. And, I'm just going to call out before I ask you that pretty much every single guest said that what they wouldn't automate are their relationships or time with friends and family. And to me, that is a very understandable but obvious answer. And so I am making a rule that we can't say that as our answer. You have to say something else. So
Yeah.
Joe, tell our listeners, if you could automate one thing in your life, what would it be? And what is one thing in your life that you would never automate?
Yeah. I mean, I think for automation, my biggest problem, and I like to look at automation this way, is like, what are you worst at? My biggest problem is like keeping track of everything that I want to do, commit to doing, like am intending to do, and making sure to like tame that chaos that I kind of go out and create throughout the day, and turn it into like all the actions I want to go and take. So I'd love to have a buddy following me around that just like kept all that, and like I could access it, and like and it would do smart things like relate it to other stuff that's going on in my life and other people that are doing work too. Like that would be that's the application I'd like.
I agree. I feel that that's similar to what Rowie from Tulip said in
Yeah.
our most recent and I thought that was genius. I think somebody
Yeah.
should go and create that, like a sophisticated to-do list coach or buddy that keeps track of all of those things and then reminds you and holds you accountable to complete those things. And I agree, that would be
Yeah.
genius.
And if Microsoft or Google is listening, the shared docs are a perfect place to put an application like that. So like the
There
Google
you go.
Office or the
Make it
Microsoft
happen.
Office. Think it out, think it over, guys. All right, the thing I would never automate. I mean, yes, I also do not want to automate my children away. Like I do love them.
You're
They're
not
pretty
allowed to
cool.
say that. You're
But
not
I'm
allowed
not
to
going to
say
say that. I'm not going to say that. The one I would never automate, at least not fully, maybe on some days, but I would not want it to go away, is cooking. I love to cook, and I love to experiment with recipes. I love to make stuff up, even when it's not very good. I like the process of like trying to imagine something being good, and like starting from a recipe and kind of making up a response to it, and all that's a creative endeavor for me. It's very different than my work day, and I really would not want to give it up.
I agree with that. And related, my answer would be eating or consuming
Ooh,
food.
yeah, also good.
I would never want to take like a pill that gives me all of my nutrition guaranteed in a day, because I just, consuming food, eating, indulging in stuff that tastes delicious, like who would ever want to not have that in their life?
It's kind of like you want to be a human, right? Like we like being a human. We are an animal, but there's like beauty in the animal. We want to be
Agreed.
creative and we want to enjoy, just doing what we're supposed to do in the world, doing what we were born to do in the world.
Agreed.
Well, wow. All right. We are now officially over time, so we're going to cut it short. It's been great to catch up after all of this. And what a wonderful thing to do together. It's my first time hosting a podcast, Ruth. I know you're an old pro, but it was new for me. And it was great to have you shepherd me along this year. So thank you.
You're now the pro, and I'm just, the amateur.
It's an Obi-Wan Kenobi Darth Vader moment going here, everybody. But thank you, Ruth. Seriously, it's been wonderful to do this with you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it half as much as we have. If so, then the following next year will overtake us with its excitement. And we're psyched to do this again next year. And we'll bring another great slate of guests on board, another cross-section. Thank you so much for listening to Generation AI. And have a wonderful holiday season, however or whatever you celebrate. And come join us again next year. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Generation AI,
Automating Better Business,
a show from Live Person.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share the episodes you love. Until next time.